So I'm Kara Gisuka with Fit Kids Conversations. Today we're going to talk to Toni Mar. And Toni, can you tell us a little bit about your background in fitness and exercise, how you ended up studying kinesiology and now teaching yoga at Cal?
Well, I always appreciated growing up watching ballet and gymnastics on TV, and then going to concerts and actually seeing people perform, and just the way the human body moves, flawlessly and effortlessly through space when they're jumping or wrapping themselves around uneven bars. I was always fascinated by that. Plus, I had a pretty good dance background. My mom signed me up to keep me out of trouble, and because I had a lot of energy. So one thing led to another, and I ended up in kinesiology. So it's a study of human movement, basically combining anatomy and physics, human movement. And I love it. I love it. And in terms of yoga, what has made it really exciting for me in yoga is that so many of these principles in yoga, which are over 5,000 years old, I'm able to see and explain things from a scientific standpoint. It's just amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do
Yeah.
you feel like some part of your childhood, did you grow up exercising or doing yoga or?
Yeah, no, I didn't start yoga until freshman, sophomore year in college. And it was only a part of a PE class that I was taking where on occasion the instructor would integrate sun salutations, and they were in the hatha style. So, but I still caught on to it, and I really liked the stretch and the flow. But then that was it. And then I was busy with life, school, college, grad school, whatnot, and got out of touch with it. I was doing more calisthenics and running and triathlons in that aspect. Then I reached a point in my life where I realized I needed to have yoga back in my life. So the rest is history.
Yeah, that's awesome. What kind of
Yeah.
sports did you do as a kid?
Not so much as a kid. It was just growing up in a neighborhood in East Oakland, riding your bike and playing with all the kids, and that's what we did. But in terms of sports, it was really more individualized, swimming and running. And then I did some cycling. So that's why I ended up doing a lot of triathlons.
That's awesome. So it sounded like you did a lot of play, but it was still very active.
Very active. And then fortunately, my mom, she always signed me up for summer workshops that offered everything from drama, dance, and music and exercise. So it was a nice variety for the summer.
Do you feel like that really affected your willingness to take classes then in college and to continue pursuing yoga?
I think so. It started the behavior back in childhood.
Yeah, that's awesome. Were there
Yeah.
specific coaches or trainers that you feel like impacted?
Yes. I was in junior high, and the instructor we had was phenomenal. She was fit, um, very engaging, passionate about what she was teaching, and she was just so inspiring. And unlike the stereotypical at that time PE teacher who had the whistle on the lanyard around the neck and the clipboard, it's like, okay, go run the blacktop and now crank out 100 push-ups, which was not very appealing. And she was just the total opposite, very inspiring, and just always educating us about what we were doing, how to get better. And that's what we needed, especially, sixth, seventh, eighth grade. It's very important, very impressionable too.
So it sounds like she kind of defined or shaped what you thought a good coach or trainer was like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even at age 12, when you find someone good, doesn't matter what age you are or what the topic is like, this person's amazing.
That's awesome. Do you feel like when you were involved in like the individual sports like swimming as a kid, you felt like there were people like you involved and that you could see yourself in your coaches?
Yes and no. I was just, I just needed to always have some kind of a physical activity as an outlet because I was very hyper as a child. Drove my parents crazy.
Yeah, just a lot of energy. And I think that's true for a lot of adults now that we're drawn to physical activity as kids. I think that's true for me too.
We feel better when the body's in movement, even if it's just unintentionally having to walk as opposed to taking your bike or driving, walking, and you just feel better afterwards. And, the body was designed for movement. So when we are active, we're doing what we're designed to do. And then when we're sedentary for even a day, it's like, oh, I've been sitting for all day. You get up, you feel tight. You feel the effects even within, a 12-hour period.
Yeah. And how do you see that being connected to kind of mind body Right. If you've been sitting, it affects your body. How do you see that affecting the mind?
It can stagnate, I think, because, after a person's been sitting for a long time, they get up, they might be a little tired, they feel tight. They have to really work on their posture and sitting up tall. And, that silk thread that always lengthens our spine. And that can cause probably a small amount of stress. But then again, these stressors that we have in our daily lives can build up, and just physicality of or lack of physicality of movement can contribute to that as well. When we are discussing and addressing things like proper diet, movement, breathing, good posture, even if you're sitting in a lecture, what a difference it makes. And we practiced and discussed all of these aspects, and they have come back and going, you're right. When I eat better, I feel better. I look better. When I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, I feel better. I can pop out of bed. These are all intricately connected. And I think it's so important to introduce that at the younger generation in schools. But unfortunately, physical education is one of the first topics or subject matters to get dumped because of school cutbacks and whatnot. And unfortunately, we have now statistics with more and more elementary school children that are experiencing obesity. And then, of course, the other types of ramifications that follow in terms of heart disease, high blood pressure, cholesterol.
One of the things I was noticing, because we were doing site visits for Fit Kids just to see how our program is affecting the kids. And that also, like, the mind body connection affects whether kids are willing or not to do exercise. Or there's like a shame mental component. I think a lot of people feel, and kids feel, to not being strong. And then they feel discouraged from exercising.
If physical activity isn't a component of their household, for example, parents aren't working out, or maybe parents are so busy working that they're not always home, and it just all the different various dynamics that go on in the home is if you don't see it, you're not exposed to it, you're not even observing it, it's kind of out of mind. So when it's, I think, introduced slowly and surely, and they're educated on what they're doing and why, I think that is a much more effective way. It's like, yeah, it's all in the way you're teaching it or presenting it to the child. It doesn't have to be so much like, we're going to do this because it's good for you. It's like, wow, you know what? When we get enough sleep or when we're walking, don't we feel better because our heart is running better? And, it really starts getting them involved. It starts attracting their attention.
So it sounds like explaining the why behind it and kind of introducing slowly, or more about the feeling than having to do something or get a specific amount of exercise done.
I used to teach kinder gym and pre-ballet, and we would get 3 and 4 or 5-year-olds. That's their starting age for the program. And, we were going to teach them how to walk on a balance beam. Well, at that age, generally, they think it's pretty fun anyway. So we would start with a little beam that's about 6 inches off the floor. And I'd say, now, this is what we're going to do. And it's like you're at their level and I'm walking, and then I deliberately fall over. I go, wow, I just fell. Wow, that was a lot of fun. Watch me again. And, you're just making the child know that there's no fear. And we just start to eventually get the beam up a little higher, and they start to really get into it and think, yeah, let's go higher. So, working with children, which I have done a lot of at studios and private gymnastics clubs, starting them at that young age, it's just so amazing just to watch them blossom from, a 3-year-old in pre-ballet or kinder gym into a, high school age gymnast competing on the team. And the process is there. They love it. They love the competition. It's okay. They know that there's going to be good days and bad days, and yet they continue on staying on the team. And again, it depends on the teaching, the coaching, the type of environment that you're fostering.
And I think maybe that's part of why so many students at Cal are also athletes, or they're doing their own activity, or they want to take classes. Because those kind of two things go hand in hand, developing physical confidence and developing confidence to show up in the classroom, to raise your hand, to ask a question, and maybe be wrong in that sense too.
Yeah, I find the beauty of our program that we have at Cal is that the classes are not required. They're not mandatory. And yet the classes are packed, and we have a lot of people on the wait lists. And a lot of seniors will often say, oh, I wish I knew about this when I was a freshman, because it's just a nice way to cultivate your own health, fitness, and mental well-being, help you maintain your sanity through the semester, through midterms, through that cycle that always happens every semester, and really start to adopt what they're learning in various classes, from the fitness classes to sports classes to yoga, dance, all the various categories that we offer, is that they start adopting elements from each experience into their everyday lives. So even when they graduate from Cal, those behaviors are still with them. Like I'll need to set 2 or 3 days aside for myself, even if it means just going for a walk around the block. That's better than nothing. And when I'm teaching, it's, for example, in core classes, it's let's go over, as we approach the end of the semester, a combination, a routine that's maybe 3 minutes long. So, okay, you have 3 minutes you can afford to do in the morning before you take your shower and then go to work.
And even that small amount of exercise can make a big impact on how you feel and your alertness and your just awareness.
Yes. For the day. Yes. It's just like making sure you make your bed in the morning. You've accomplished a task, and it's something that's you could see the results. So it's like, okay, I have something accomplished. Now I'm going to spend the next 3 minutes doing a short combination in calisthenics. Just something simple as that. I mean, what I'm doing now with my life, it's been very exceptionally busy right now. I have a pair of dumbbells in my house, and it's like, okay, before I go to bed, I just need to do 3 sets of 10, which is very minimal, very elementary, but it keeps me in that behavior and habit of doing it. And now I've been doing it pretty consistently now. There may be a day or so that I might miss, and I realize it's okay. I used to beat myself up in missing a workout when I was in college, but you get older, you get more reasonable and practical, and it's like, okay, I'll just do another set tomorrow, no worries. And I think that's a really important part, probably more for young adults and adults, is missing a workout. It's not the end of the world. It's all in how you see it. And with kids, it's like, it could be a formal exercise activity, maybe, in school during a PE period of time, or let's just go hop and skip. Motor skills. I mean, that's another thing that we need to instill in the elementary school age children. Coordination, balance, rhythm, flow, motor skills, gross motor skills, fine motor skills, because that also affects, well, obviously the brain, and that is the mind-body connection as well.
That's actually one of the things our founder, Ashley Hunter, realized within the process of creating a program, because she was working and checking out East Palo Alto schools, and she realized she wanted to help them run sports in their communities, and they didn't have the basic motor skills to be able to do that. And also those bigger sports can be really intimidating if you don't already have skills and a decent level of athleticism.
Right. Well, and what you said, commented on, it's very organic. It's, if I'm going to run, maybe there's a period of time in a school program where, well, we're just going to start jogging and running, is first do some basic calisthenic exercises where the child is actually using those large muscle groups that they're using when they jog or run, so they understand the parts to the whole and they're more familiar with it, and also decreases risk of injury, and it makes it fun. I mean, you've got to make exercise fun. And so again, you have to have the right instructor, you have to be animated, you have to be creative, as well as understanding the mindset of a 8-year-old or whatever that age group is. And you work it from there. And you could even integrate things like nutrition. When the activity is formally introduced, the child's so much more familiar and perhaps even more eager, because they know the muscles in their body that you maybe spent some time with introducing. Here's your leg, here's your arm. Let's do this. Do you feel it? Yeah, those are those muscles. That's what you're going to feel when we jog or when we walk fast.
Right. And I think if you put it from that perspective, it also teaches kids that they can get stronger, and there's not so much pressure to always be winning a game, right? To be like, oh, I'm aware of my body. And I think that's the same thing with doing mindfulness or yoga. But it seems less intimidating to kind of be introduced to exercise through yoga and mindfulness.
Mm-hmm. I think the one thing that I incorporate a lot when I'm teaching our college age students is, for example, going in, standing and then bending over and reaching down to the floor like a forward bend. And I have to constantly remind them, because the cow mindset is so rigid, that it's not about touching your toes. Even though they think I've got to be able to have my legs straight and touch my toes, after I first demonstrate or even describe it, they think it's not happening. Oh my God, they think they're a failure. And it's like, stop. And oftentimes I'll just say, take a deep breath, repeat after me. And I say, what the hell? And they're totally like responsive. They'll say, what the hell? But they're going, why do we just do that? Then they start laughing. They realize I am just too serious. I'm overthinking. I'm overanalyzing. So, and I found that with that kind of attitude, it also is helpful when you're working with children. I mean, you're not necessarily going to say, what the hell? But that's the mindset. Like, oh, wow, that's great. That's what it's about. Do you feel this happening? Then it's happening. And the encouragement and praise and rewarding them with, the good feedback that they need, and realistic as well. I mean, I don't want to say that's really good when maybe it isn't, but I want to present it, or maybe I might present something a different way to a child, just so they know that whatever they're doing is they're doing it right.
And it sounds like also each exercise is going to look different in each kid's body and their level of fitness. And that also doesn't mean that they're doing it incorrectly.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's also very important that the facilitator or the instructor or coach who's working with them does have that background and training in the body, in anatomy and, kinesiology, some basics, so they understand what's happening.
I'm going to shift back to kind of your own journey with fitness. You started doing swimming and you did one other sport.
Cycling. I did. Yeah. I'm the kind of personality, it's kind of all or nothing. So when I was swimming, I'd be sure I would swim like 1,000 yards. And then if I was running, I made sure I had to run 5 miles. And, I had my own little quotas set for myself, and I'd write it on the calendar. And then that also led into an interest in diet and nutrition, sports training, sports and exercise, nutrition, and it's all integrated. One thing led to another, and that's kind of really the exciting part, is that dealing with the human body in motion, whether it's sports, recreation, art, or just that, just walking, is so interrelated with everything. How much sleep we get, recovery time, hydration, diet, nutrition, because that also contributes to less stress. The information available now with the neuroplasticity of the brain, the effects of breathing deeply, just having better posture, it's so amazing and so fun and exciting to be able to share that kind of information with people, because it's just all together. It's just very holistic.
So is that one of the things that you realized that you needed the help with, of yoga, with stress management, when you were then in school and you were not doing yoga?
Yes, absolutely. I just woke up in the morning and going, I need to start yoga again.
How did you end up getting back into it and then getting trained?
I was actually offered in a fitness club that I used to work, and they hired some yoga instructors, and I thought, okay, I'm going to take the class. I don't know. I don't care what the style is. I just need to get into that mode of 2 to 3 days a week. Again, that behavior of I'm going to set time aside for myself. And I did it. And then it was just, again, addicting. And then I started studying with teachers, like at studios, and going to workshops and conferences, and just really expanding it. And then having, my own teaching background, and observing the teacher, observing the rest of the classmates as well as myself, I reached a point where I thought, I think that I would enjoy teaching yoga as well. And that expanded not just from the technicality of poses, but I started venturing into other areas, like learning about chakras, learning about energy, learning a little bit more about thermodynamics. I mean, so many different multidisciplinary components of yoga, if you wanted to break it down. But it was just so amazing to study things in yoga that, as I mentioned earlier, it's over 5,000 years old, and yet now we can explain things because we modern people have the technology, to explain the colors of the rainbow always are in a certain order, which happen to be the order of the colors of the chakras in the body, which, 5,000 years ago, they didn't have all these types of equipment to determine that.
Do you feel
Yeah.
equipment has really changed how a lot of the exercise is performed and our ability to as well?
Yes, absolutely. And just to explain it, even though it's, dance, yoga, calisthenics, for example, if you look at the sport of football, as they improve on the technology of their gear, their helmets, everything that they have to wear, which means that there's going to be more intensity in terms of tackling. You have to be careful about that. And like with kids, that's why they will have flag football as opposed to, wearing the helmet and everything, is to modify it, which I think is so much safer. And I on occasion would think, if we watched our Sunday football teams on the, with NFL, what happened, how different their play would be if they didn't have the helmets and the pads and everything would be completely different. So, even you working yoga without a yoga mat, I think that's great. It's a challenge perhaps, but part of yoga is to learn how to handle adversity, which we could all use in our everyday lives.
Part of what we provide to schools with is equipment. It's been interesting to see the creative ways it's been used, but also it really helps, I think, because often we'll do an exercise and you could do it with a ball or with a cone or with like a poly spot. But if you have a sandbag that's a little heavier, it does change kind of the mind-body connection and the amount of effort you're putting into the exercise.
Yeah. Plus with kids, it's like, oh, something new, a new, we have balls now or ropes. It makes it more exciting for them as opposed to, well, here we are in a room with four walls and there's the, exercise mat.
So going back to stress management, how have you seen yoga and mindfulness impact students and just kind of it sounds like you're really busy as well, right? It's probably impacting you as well. How have you seen that?
It's been a real joy. And this is based on the feedback as well as just observing people's body language and even facial expressions during class is they are able to accomplish things that they never thought they could before. For example, just having good posture. So we focus on having posture in a seated position, which is not something that most people do in our society. We don't sit on the floor in a cross-legged position. We're usually in a chair. So the muscles and posture are all affected by our daily activities. They adapt to impose demands. So if I'm always sitting in a chair, my musculature will be adapted to sitting in a chair. But if I'm sitting on the floor, it's much different. I have much more mobility in my hips, et cetera, et cetera. And one, for example, exercise that we did in my mindfulness class is we talked about Om, what the symbol means, different parts of the character, and we listened to it and then we practiced it, and that was fun because a lot of people says, oh, is it okay if I like not have my my speaker on? And I go, fine. Sometimes I says, if you want to have your screen off, that's fine too. It's just whatever is going to help encourage that individual to continue participating and engage themselves in it. So I had a tape for 20 minutes of Om. And I says, I just want you to listen to it, start practicing, stay with it. And so they could chant along, and they did it for 20 minutes and they were all really blown away. And a lot of people in their comments was, I have never been able to sit in my entire adult life for 20 minutes. And I just felt so refreshed. And the comments and feedback was really, really fun. It was very individualized, of course, but it's very positive. So I use that as a way just to illustrate what we've done in the mindfulness. We've done other things too, as far as like, let's move, let's breathe, let's stretch. And then eventually I did teach them the sun salutation, because that way they were learning about opposition. Upward dog, downward dog, and how the qualities of opposition also work in our everyday lives so that we can balance things out.
Okay,
Yeah.
we just have a couple minutes left. Are there other key takeaways that you think anyone listening would find helpful about kind of your own teaching journey, about fitness, about youth education and sports?
Well, I definitely think it needs to be integrated, and in a perfect world, just aside from budget cuts and whatnot, if physical education or activities are not available in the school, that perhaps, the curriculum can be modified and adapted by the instructors and perhaps the school administration to allow certain amounts of time on certain days set aside for activity. I mean, it's, the kids, they're so wound up. And again, we had mentioned earlier, sometimes they're not even exposed to any kind of physical activity. Is that let's just spend a few minutes just spending time on, selected activities, whatever they feel is appropriate for these kids, so that they start to learn about their bodies. They learn how to move. They learn how to use their bodies, how they can be stronger, how it helps them carry a backpack a little easier, how they can remind mom and dad to sit up tall. I mean, it's just such a heavy duty community element involved, but it starts within the individual, and it starts by having someone start to open up that door for these kids, and then slowly introduce diet and nutrition and how to make better decisions. If mom and dad are taking them to McDonald's or whatever the situation is, just to be much more aware, and that we don't need to have a fancy gym membership or equipment. We could just our own body weight, movement, and gravity. And then, it just really takes a load off of people's minds, because they think, oh, the only way I can do this or that is if I have this and that. It's like, no, we don't even have to have anything. Encourage them, go home, do it on the weekends, go take a walk, grab your friends, get a group, go shoot hoops. I mean, there's just so many things that you can do. And even if it means getting some chalk and being creative on the sidewalk, it's still movement. So
Right.
is gardening. So is help your mom vacuum the floor. It's all physical activity.
Yeah, all of those things. That's very integrative, to go ahead and combine everything and everyday life, right? Like incorporating little movements. I mean, even if you take a break from sitting at a desk for a little bit, we go on a walk, like that helps, I think, tremendously.
Absolutely. Absolutely.